Moshe Rabbeinu is mystified by the thought that a coin could atone for a person's neshama. So the Eibishter shows him a fiery coin. Why a fiery coin? Why does Hashem have to show it to him? What is the deeper message of this very intriguing statement of our sages? The pasuk that says this is what you should give, which is the instruction for the half shekel. The Chazal tell us that David took out a fiery coin from under the kisei hakavod, showed it to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he said, "This is what you give as a half shekel," which the Chazal explained to mean kol ze yitnu. You give a coin which is like this fiery coin. So the question is, what's so difficult about this mitzvah of machzas shekel? Which is the reason that David has to do such a dramatic thing to show Moshe Rabbeinu, here is a three-dimensional model, a fiery version of this coin. Why? What's he so bothered about? Tisa explains. Moshe was astounded by the thought. What is there that a person can give that could redeem his soul? So therefore, they had to show him fiery coin. That in itself needs to be explained. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu so perturbed and astounded by the idea that you can give a coin to do a mitzvah, and that's going to atone for your neshama? Any simple magid who gets up to darshan in front of a community knows, Shishler says the Rabbi, by the way, noticing that such a person, his intellectual development is light years less developed than Moshe Rabbeinu's incredible seichel. Moshe Rabbeinu is the choicest human being who understood more than any other human being, and had the ultimate version of intellect. And yet, a simple magid, is very easy and very simply ready to explain that when he does a mitzvah, he deserves a reward. But sometimes the reward is an incredibly large reward, like the pasuk tells us. If you follow my mitzvahs, then I'm going to give you rains in the appropriate times, and various other really big brachas. Same thing here. But because you did the mitzvah machzas shekel, you deserve a reward, which is mekabel hanois and kefer nafshay. This particular reward that you receive is atonement for your neshama. V'im kain, if we know that that's how the Eibishter works, that he rewards us for our mitzvahs and sometimes with massive reward. Mawa pele. What's the surprise? Pele godel de Moshe Rabbeinu, specifically the incredible surprise of somebody of the caliber of Moshe Rabbeinu. Mitzvah zoi, that if you fulfill this mitzvah, the Eibishter chose to give you a reward. What's the reward? That you atone for your neshama. So what's the big question that the Eibishter has to put Moshe's mind to rest with a fiery coin? Now, if we're talking about a fiery coin, it's also strange that the Eibishter would have responded with a fiery coin. Number one, why is it important to know that it's a coin of fire? Whichever way you look at it, the fact that it's a coin of fire seems to be either unnecessary or strange information. If you're saying it's a fiery coin because it belongs in heaven, and in heaven everything is fiery, as we say, the pasuk tells us that those who serve the Eibishter are flaming fires, which then makes it logical that if the Eibishter is going to show us something, naturally it would be in the form of fire. If that's true, then you don't have to say that this coin that the Eibishter is showing is a fiery coin, because everything that's in Shamayim is fiery, and everything that the Eibishter would show would be fiery. Everything in the higher realm would be fiery. Why do you have to emphasize it over here? On the other hand, if you're going to say that had the Torah or the Chazal not specified that this was a fiery coin, I would have thought that the Eibishter showed Moshe a regular half shekel coin, made out of silver and not out of fire. For example, we know there's precedent for this, because the Eibishter says that the Eibishter tells Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to set up the Mishkan like you were shown on Har Sinai, and that was a physical version of the Mishkan, or a 3D rendering of the Mishkan, not a fiery version. So then there is Bilidach. If the Eibishter is going to show him a regular coin, then you need to explain, if the Eibishter could have shown him a regular coin, why did he choose to show him a fiery coin? In other words, what's the significance of the fire of this coin? Question number 2b is Ve'ikar, an even greater question. Showing a fiery coin, how does it answer Moshe's surprise? Moshe's issue is, how do I on earth give a physical silver half shekel coin and that atones for my neshama? How do you answer that question? By the Eibush is saying, oh look, here's a fiery version of the same coin. Doesn't answer my question. Now, you might want to suggest that these two questions, actually the one answers the other. How so? Maybe the answer, how a half shekel coin can atone for a neshama is, depends what kind of a coin it is. It's got to be a coin of fire, meaning, number one, it's not a regular coin. This is a coin associated with a mitzvah. And a mitzvah is koi dvarai ke'esh. The Eibush says that his mitzvahs are the words of fire. So we're doing it with a physical coin, but the coin is a mitzvah. Therefore, it has a fiery element to it. Not only that, especially when a person does the mitzvah with a tremendous amount of energy and passion, with a fire that burns inside his soul, then you could say, this is not a regular coin anymore. This is a coin which is on fire. And it's the fire that you have invested inside this coin that allows it to atone for you. Maybe that's the answer. The only thing is, surely Moshe Rabbeinu would know that kind of thing. That's going to strengthen our original question. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu so surprised by this process in the first place? This explanation we've just given, that when a mitzvah is associated with a physical thing, then that physical thing has fire element to it. Number one, hu alef, darshan. You do not need Moshe Rabbeinu to tell you that. Any darshan can get up in Shul on Shabbos and say exactly that. Infuse your coin, your tzedakah, your mitzvah with fire. And second of all, Bay is going to get a chol mitzvahs. It's something relevant to every mitzvah, not specifically to the half shekel. Number one, every physical item I ever use for any mitzvah is now infused with a spiritual content, which is the fire within it, not only the half shekel. Why is it suddenly bothering Moshe Rabbeinu now? And why specifically about Machas Tisa shekel? It's a principle, it's an axiom in Judaism. We invest fiery spirituality in the mitzvahs that we do with physical items. So let's take the question a step further. Let's say that this is the issue. If the whole message over here is when you do a mitzvah, it makes the physical more fiery, and when you do the mitzvah with enthusiasm, then you put real fire into it, and then it can do magic. It can even atone for your soul. Okay, the Eibush could have told that to Moshe Rabbeinu. Explain it, like we're explaining it right now. In fact, the ideal way to get the message across is the way we get the message of the rest of Torah across, which is verbally. Every other part of Judaism was transmitted to Moshe with words. So use your words over here and say the same thing. A coin that is used for a mitzvah is a fiery coin. Why here does we need show and tell? Why here does Moshe Rabbeinu have to see a fiery coin that David takes out from under the Kisei HaKoved? Seeing as it's pretty clear that in this particular instance, David had to do something incredibly unusual. To show a flaming fiery coin. And then to say, this is what you should give. It must be because there's something about the Machat shekel which is unique and not something you find in all other mitzvahs. Now the question is, what? What's so unique about the Machat shekel? Now before we get there, we have to assess this idea that when you do a mitzvah, something positive comes to you for it. You get a bracha for it. Is that a natural consequence? Or is that something that the Eibush decided and it doesn't necessarily have to make sense to us? So Nekudas Habir, Yeshloimar, the explanation hinges on this. The idea that you are rewarded for a mitzvah could happen in one of two ways. Either you could say, Aleph, the doing of this particular mitzvah is an activity where because of the nature of this activity, it naturally causes a particular reward. So the reward that you're getting is a natural outgrowth of the performance of the mitzvah. And perhaps an example would be you put a mezuzah on your door which says on a Chin Daliyut Shema Daltos Israel, so the natural consequence is you have security in your home. Or Bays, or is it that the reward for the mitzvah has no logical link to the mitzvah itself? But that's what the Eibishter decided. That the Eibishter decided the reward for mitzvah X is going to be experienced for bracha Y. Now, this would be similar to the division that we make between mitzvahs themselves. Some mitzvahs are easy to understand, some have no reason whatsoever. There are certain mitzvahs that we do without any plausible reason. Why do we do them? Because it's a gezerah that the Eibishter made. So in the same way, there's certain mitzvahs that you just do because the Eibishter said so. There's certain rewards for mitzvahs that are these rewards just because the Eibishter said so. It is possible that for certain mitzvahs, even mitzvahs that are so logical that we should have known how to do them without the Torah, it's still possible that you're not saying schar godel be'erech ha-mitzvah, that the Eibishter could assign a reward which is way beyond the value of the mitzvah, because that's what he decided. This is a decree that the Eibishter created. So now that we have these two possibilities, which one is this atonement that comes through the machatzis shekel? We have identified that if you give your half shekel, it atones for your neshama. Why? How come? When you look at it logically, a coin is an extremely physical, finite object, and atonement for the neshama is an incredibly spiritual experience. They're actually on two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. Even look in human service of the Eibishter, right? The reason we're created as human beings is to serve the Eibishter. One of the things we could use to serve the Eibishter is money, of which kesef, this coin, machatzis shekel, the silver coin, is obviously part of currency. Now let's think, out of all the things that we could use to serve the Eibishter, this is one of the lowest. In our mom, in kesef izov, material items like silver and gold, out of all the material assets that a person has, these are from the lowest. Like you see clearly. As we see, that the desire for money can lead a person into the worst, lowest, most debased experiences. To the extent that the Gemara tells us, when it comes to halachas of Shabbos, we have to make certain leniencies for people around their own money and assets, because sometimes they just can't control themselves. Or as we say with the halacha of a fire on Shabbos, that a person gets completely tzamished to tumult because of their assets. That's the allure, that's the debasement of money. Not only that, this is reflected in where you find silver and gold. Firstly, they belong to the inanimate, which is the lowest of the low of all life forms. And where do you find silver and gold? Deep in the earth, you have to mine it out. The lowest of the lowest of the low. And then you still need processes, refinement processes, to get the silver and the gold out of the ore. So, what is silver and gold and money? The lowest of the physical world on the one hand. We're talking about the atonement for the nefesh. Every soul is obviously an extremely high, elevated, advanced spiritual entity. Especially when you talk about a Jewish soul, which is literally a piece of the Eibishter. Therefore, there is no rational basis in any way that I should be able to give money, a coin, the lowest of the low of the low, and there's no logic to say there's something inherent in the coin which can redeem a soul. That it should have a benefit and a redeeming quality for a neshama, which is a part of the Eibishter, literally. Doesn't make any sense. You'll say it's a mitzvah, and like every other mitzvah, transforms a physical item into the fiery spiritual reality. That's not the coin. The coin's not changing. The fire is in the mitzvah that this coin is used for. But the coin remains a coin, which is a physical coin that looks like all other physical coins. That means the action of this mitzvah, the giving of that physical coin, is in no way related to what it achieves. So it must fall into that category of rewards that are because the Eibishter said so, because there's no logical link between this little finite coin that comes from the depths of the earth and the release of my neshama, which is so powerful. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu is so surprised by. From Moshe's intellectual vantage point, which is the seichel of Torah itself, nimtza, the only explanation that could justify why giving a coin could redeem the neshama has to be it's a choik. It's beyond rational explanation. Because any kind of intellectual process, including the ultimate intellectual process, Moshe Rabbeinu understanding Torah, dismisses this as impossible. There are many reasons why you could doubt that this should even work. But because it's what the Eibishter decided and it's the Eibishter's decree, you're not permitted to go down the rabbit hole of where your mind wants to go, because that's all that makes sense. What bothers Moshe Rabbeinu is, on the other hand, there's no evidence in the Torah that the Eibishter associates the concept of a choik to the mitzvah machatzis shekel. Then it must have some logical explanation. That's why Moshe is so surprised. What could a person possibly give that could redeem his soul? You're implying that there is a logical explanation, and no logic can seem to uncover that explanation. How could there be any rationale to this idea that giving a physical coin, in this case a half shekel, should be an action that has the power to be able to release the neshama? So that's what the Eibishter is addressing, not how can I choose to make something have an effect. The Eibishter is kol yochel. But what's the logic that this coin should be able to release the neshama? How does the Eibishter answer it? He shows him a fiery coin and says, this is what you should give. What the Eibishter is showing him is that when a yid donates the half shekel, the coin changes. Not only because the coin is now assigned the value of a mitzvah, but the coin is now a fiery coin. Now you can see a logical link, because this coin is no longer a regular coin. It is now a spiritual coin. If it's a spiritual coin, I can understand logically that it could have an effect on my neshama, which is spiritual. And this is unlike tzedakah. Tzedakah doesn't affect the coin doesn't become transformed. But rather the reason tzedakah is so powerful is because, as Chazal tell us, and it's quite logical, you enlivened, you gave chayos, you brought somebody back to life because they were on the edge, and you gave them money so they could eat. So it only follows logically that the Eibishter will reward you in kind by protecting your life and the life of your family. But that kind of logic is not going to apply to the machatzis shekel, because those are going to be turned into the silver bases that the walls of the Mishkan were placed in. So what's the link? How is it possible that any physical item, even if that physical item is the basis for the walls of the Mishkan, still, how could that redeem the neshama? Says the Eibishter, because the coin has changed. What does that mean? The explanation is this. The fact that the Eibishter showed him a fiery coin and said this is what you should give, instead of explaining to him that there's fire in the coin, not only is the Eibishter showing him what it looks like, the Eibishter is changing the reality. The Eibishter now created a new reality. The machatzis shekel that Eden gave at that point, which then in turn seeped into and influenced all of the half shekels throughout the whole of Jewish history, is now no longer just a physical coin. The coin is fiery. In other words, that means this coin that the Eibishter is showing Moshe Rabbeinu, which is a coin of fire, this is the coin at its highest spiritual source, fire under the Eibishter's kisei hakavod. Every Yid is going to give that coin. Every single Jew is going to give a coin that is a fiery coin, which means a coin invested with holiness. Meaning, not only because I'm doing a mitzvah with this coin, I've now invested into this mitzvah something of holiness, something of fire, which is the same for any mitzvah, my mezuzah, my tefillin, etc. This machatzis shekel is in a category of its own, that the coin becomes a coin of fire. A coin of fire, not a coin with a fire value, a coin of fire. It doesn't just mean that this is a coin which links back to a high spiritual level, where that spiritual level is a coin of fire. Because that's true for every physical thing. It links back to a spiritual source. Every physical thing is an evolutionary expression of its spiritual source. But usually the way it is, the source remains a spiritual reality, and the physical item becomes a physical, unspiritual, uninspired reality. The Eibishter is now changing the reality of this half shekel coin, that even though it has evolved from its source, which is Tachas Kisei HaKavod, and it's now entered into this world and become a physical silver half coin. The moment you use this coin specifically for this purpose of the half shekel, the coin changes, so that while it is a physical coin, it is simultaneously a fiery spiritual coin. That tells you what this great innovation of the half shekel is. Which is why the Eibishter had to do such a dramatic move, which is uncommon in any other mitzvah, that he had to bring out the fiery coin. And to say, this is what you're going to give, which is completely different to any other mitzvah. Because what is common to all mitzvahs? What's common to all mitzvahs is that this action called a mitzvah infuses a physical activity with a spiritual content and value. And how does that work out? The physical remains physical. I put a coin into the tzedakah box, it's still a coin. Make a bracha over food, the food is still food. So therefore it is below and removed from its source meharuchni. It's the spiritual version of the same thing. It's just that inside this physical thing, there's now a pulsating life force which is from the spiritual. That's exactly what ishtalshlus means. That at every lower consequent stage of the process, the higher stages are embedded, they're just not visible. Sometimes they're visible. But the whole concept of Seder ishtalshlus is further down the chain, is lower on the chain. In machatzis shekel, that chain is broken. This half shekel that the Jew gives, this becomes a coin of fire. This is living a paradox, simultaneously two different realities. Let's say we were looking in the physical world, a coin versus physical fire, two ends of the spectrum. Because matbehi offer, a coin is made out of things which are inanimate, like earth. And out of offer, this is from the depths of the earth, as we've already discussed. You have to mine it. That's the lowest of the four core styles of existence. Whereas fire is the highest of the four basic elements. And that's how it is physically. How much more so, the disparity between the physical coin and the spiritual fire that is supposed to invest inside of it must be eons apart. As we well know, the four basic elements of existence correspond to the four worlds of existence. Earth represents the lowest of all the worlds. Whereas fire is a representation of Olam Atzilus, the very highest of all the worlds. So from earth, represented by the coin, to fire, the matbeah shel eish, couldn't get a further distance. To bring those two absolute poles together, matbeah gashmis, matbeah shel eish, a physical coin, and a fiery coin, especially when you consider the fire of this coin is not the fire of earth, it's the fire of the Eibishter's Kisei HaKavod. You're disrupting the entire structure of all of creation and how it's supposed to work. Because the meaning of Ishtalshus, which is the structure of existence, is that a lower reality evolves from a higher reality, meaning it must be lower than the higher reality. And here you're saying they're enmeshed. Yes, okay. Not only is this a disruption of the order of existence of creation, this is even a disruption of the order that Torah ascribes to the world. In fact, it's even disrupting the way that Torah itself works. Even Torah works in a structural cascading system. Because you've got the lowest of the four ways in which we interpret Torah, Pshat, which corresponds to the world of Asiya, which is the lowest of all the worlds, which corresponds to Doimim. Is something which evolved after three major permutations from the world of Soid of Kabbalah, which corresponds to the world of Atzilus, and therefore it's way, way lower than the realm of Atzilus, than the realm of Soid. So therefore, to bridge these two worlds, and more than bridge them, to harmonize, to synthesize these two worlds, the highest of the high represented by the fire and the lowest of the low represented by the physical coin, and Malach couldn't do that. Even Torah, so to speak, couldn't do that. Because a Malach lives in a reality of a cascading structure, and Torah is designed as a cascading structure. Therefore, both of them have to conform to the rules of that cascading structure. So the only possibility of bringing fire and coin into one reality, only the Eibishter could do that himself, who would choose of his own free volition, not because of any force. The Eibishter decided that there has to be a hierarchy. The Eibishter had decided that there has to be a cascading evolution of energies. But because the Eibishter can do anything, and is able to prevent anything from preventing him from doing anything, the Eibishter can override the system. It can bring together the two absolute opposites, the Gashmis, Viruchnis, of physical and spiritual, into one reality. That there should be a physical coin, and simultaneously practically in the physical world, it could also be a fiery coin, while it's still a regular coin. That's the response that the Eibishter gives to Moshe Rabbeinu as described in the Medrash. The Eibishter took out a fiery coin, and he said, this is what you should give. Why does he have to Omar loy? Why does he have to say to him Zayitnu? HaKadosh Baruch Hu Daika, there are two things to focus here. Why are we referring to the Eibishter Dafka as HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Vali de Amira, and why specifically that he says to him Zayitnu? Haisachtus Gashmis Viruchnis. This fusing together of the physical and the spiritual, reflected in the fact that a physical coin is equally a fiery coin. They both happen simultaneously. Kesef v'koif nafshay. It is both kesef with all the limitations of physical money, and koif nafshay, the release of the neshama simultaneously. How could such a thing happen? Only the Eibishter could do that, because only the Eibishter is not bound by the system and therefore could change the system completely. Because the Eibishter decided to have a Seder Shtalshlus, and therefore Pshita Sheina Mugval B'Shtalshlus V'Yochel Levatlo, it clearly is not bound by the rules that he made up, and therefore he can override those rules at any given time. And if you think about it, even creation itself is a bending of the rules. As the Alter Rebbe describes in Tanya what creation is, creating something out of absolute nothing. Says the Alter Rebbe, the only way that is possible that you could create something out of nothing has to be from the essence of the source of everything, which is the Eibishter. Because the Eibishter is inherently in existence, in other words, he exists because of his essence, and is not the evolutionary result of any preceding force. Therefore, because the Eibishter is not dependent on any kind of external force, therefore only the Eibishter could create something out of absolute nothing. So how did the Eibishter create things out of absolute nothing? Did so through speaking. As the Mishnah tells us that the Eibishter created the world through 10 utterances. As the Pasuk says, with the word of the Eibishter, the heavens came into existence. So therefore, if the Eibishter is going to now create a new reality, which is the fusion of physical and spiritual, something completely new, something completely unexpected, that you should have a physical coin which is equally a fiery spiritual coin, the only way that could happen is the Eibishter has to say it into being, like he said existence into being. When the Eibishter says those words, this is what you give, that the coin we're giving should be zeh, that kind of a coin that the Eibishter is showing, a coin of spiritual fire, that creates this new reality. In the same way as the Eibishter made things exist where previously there was nothing, which is a huge surprise. How did he do it? By saying words. So the Eibishter puts together spiritual and physical, which is a huge surprise. How? By saying Zeyitnu. So what are we seeing? The message over here is that this is an incredibly unique mitzvah because it fuses the spiritual and physical worlds together in a way that defies all of the rules of the spiritual and physical reality, the whole created reality, because the Eibishter decided to do so and spoke it into reality. Now, he could still ask the question, hang on a second. Surely Moshe Rabbeinu knew all of this. Even before the Eibishter showed him this magnificent fiery coin, he knew he knew that the Eibishter is capable of fusing opposites. So therefore, it must have been obvious to Moshe Rabbeinu that at any time that the Eibishter chooses, he could fuse the physical coin with its spiritual source, as he could theoretically do for anything, actually. Which takes us back to our original question. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu so surprised that the Eibishter came up with this process that you give a half shekel and it atones? Why? What's the big deal? The Eibishter can do anything. The Eibishter can match anything back to its source. There are a few ways we could approach this. Aleph, number one, Moshe Rabbeinu represents the ultimate version of holy intellect, Torah intellect. It is a requirement that this kind of reality must be stunning, must be astounding, must be questionable. It's just that I respect the fact that the Eibishter decrees X and Y, and I'm not going to ask. But nobody can suggest that it's so obvious. Yes, the Eibishter can do anything. Doesn't mean he will. Doesn't mean he has to do it in the case of the half shekel. So it still remains mind-boggling that this is actually happening. Number two, base. As we already mentioned, the Eibishter gives no clue in the Torah that this machatzis shekel is actually a choik. So therefore there has to be a logical reason why Moshe Rabbeinu is so surprised about it. And that is that this is an ordinary mitzvah, so it would appear, that belongs on the hierarchy of mitzvahs, and certainly is not in the realm of those mitzvahs that defy logic completely. That's why when the Medrash describes how the Eibishter responds to Moshe's question, it says, that he showed him the coin. The Eibishter wants to void Moshe's surprise. It's not good enough to tell him theoretically this could happen. Because then Moshe Rabbeinu would say, okay, I have to accept that this is reality, but I can't process it. I don't see it. I don't see how it's possible. And it's the Eibishter has to show him this action that transforms a physical coin into a fiery spiritual coin. Moshe Rabbeinu has to see it with his own eyes. It has to be absolutely obvious, revealed, shared. In a way of such clarity that we say zeh is something you can point at because it's so real, you can point at it. Now this is not just Moshe Rabbeinu's personal experience. This experience that Moshe is exposed to is not just for him privately, it extends to the entire Jewish people. Because they're going to give these coins. And when they give their half shekel, it's going to be a fiery half shekel. That means the coins they donate, you'll be able to detect in those coins that these are fiery coins. As the explanation goes in the Midrash, that Moshe Rabbeinu had to be so clear on what's going on with this fiery coin that he could convey it to the Jewish people. In other words, their experience of the machatzis shekel is completely shifted. It's not just a physical experience. And there's another reason why it specifically had to be a fiery coin. Because for the Eibusher to illustrate that this coin that the Yidden are going to give is not just a regular coin, but it's a coin that belongs in the Eibusher's Kisei HaKavod, there's actually more than one way to do this. And it doesn't have to be fire. Because in heaven there's also the concept of water. Michael is the archangel of water. And there's other manifestations. Why does the Eibusher Dafka choose a coin of fire? Because what the Eibusher is not only showing, but achieving, that not only should our giving of the half shekel be a spiritual exercise, but much more than that, spiritual in a form of fire. What's so unique about fire? What distinguishes fire from the other three basic elements? Look in physical terms, what's the big difference between fire and, on the other hand, air, water, and earth? Look how things are in the physical realm. Whatever happens in the physical realm is just an expression of how things are spiritually. The nature of all of these others is to move downwards. At the very least, they stay stagnant like a stone. Fire defies the reality of gravity and of our world, and it's always moving upwards. In fact, you have to intervene to keep the fire in this world by having fuel and having a wick. Without that, fire disappears to the shorish of fire, which is below the orbit of the moon, as the Rambam tells us. This is why the Eibusher shows Moshe Rabbeinu specifically a coin of fire. Because when the Jews give their half shekel, it's not only are they giving a spiritual coin, which might have been represented by water also. They're giving a coin that has the qualities of fire. This coin is now infused with the nature of fire, which is to consistently rise higher and higher within the spiritual reality. Which helps us better understand how a physical coin can atone for the neshama. Because this physical coin has the quality of fire. The quality of fire illustrates movement upwards, illustrating that I'm moving away from materialism and I'm yearning for spirituality, which is actually what the Machatzis HaShekel activates within the person's mind and experience. Which teaches us a beautiful, magnificent lesson. Of course, the idea of the half shekel was primarily in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, where they had to donate the half shekel in order to facilitate the communal sacrifices brought throughout the course of the year. But we also know, we still retain the minig today, that before Purim we give, on the eve of Purim before we daven mincha, a denomination of coin which is considered a half in the local currency, as a commemoration of the machatzis shekel that used to be given in Chodesh Adar. And because when the Torah speaks about donations to the Mishkan, it uses the word truma 3 times. But parasha, yes, therefore we give 3 times that particular denomination. That's what we do on Erev Purim. Beyond that, besides the fact that there was a physical Mishkan and a physical Beis Hamikdash that used to be in the desert and in Yerushalayim, historically, there is the spiritual equivalent inside of ourselves. As the pasuk says, the Eibusher wants me to make a mikdash in order that he should dwell within us, which means that the Eibusher wanted to dwell and wants to dwell within every single Jewish person, and therefore every one of us has to fashion a mishkan Beis Hamikdash inside of ourselves. Move on, therefore, it's understood. Within our spiritual service, there's got to be an equivalent of this half shekel, which is used to build those bases on which the whole wall system of the Mishkan is constructed. Except over here, we're talking about our spiritual version. So the lesson for us comes from the fact that the Eibishter tells Moshe Rabbeinu, give a fiery coin. Meaning, when the Yidden give a coin for a mitzvah, tzedakah, or even when we're not giving the poor person money, but at least we're helping to settle them with a kind word, with a physical word, which requires the physical speech elements. It's not just an ordinary coin or an ordinary word. It's a fiery coin and a fiery word. This is something of spirituality, of holiness, and of constant elevation. With the qualities of fire that are always moving upwards. And that's how we should see ourselves. That we're not just stamazoi, doing a mitzvah, or helping a poor person out. It's a spiritual, uplifting experience. And we extrapolate out from the understanding of the half shekel to all the other mitzvahs. Every action that a Jewish person takes in the spheres of Torah mitzvahs, even if the activity is a very physical activity. I make tzitzis out of wool. Tefillin biklaf gashmi. I make tefillin out of hide. Etc. I need to understand fundamentally that these are not just simply physical activities. These are fiery activities, spiritual activities, holy activities, uplifting activities. And that's why it makes such a difference when we're doing what we have to do as Jewish people with enthusiasm, with warmth and energy, excitement, with a fire of Kedusha, to the extent that people can see in what we're doing. They can see this as a fiery coin. That's how we're supposed to live. And we should do so successfully to the extent that we fulfill what the Torah tells us, that there's a constant fire burning on the altar of the heart, that will never be extinguished. And Mitzvah Hashem will have that fire and that passion of our Yiddishkeit will elevate us consistently and bring us to the point where we can have the Eish Tamid on the Mizbeach with the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi B'Korev Mamish.